Recently, I had the chance to interview Mr. Octavio Garcia. Octavio has made quite the impact on watch design from his time at Omega, designing the likes of the Constellation, Speed, and Seamasters, to his 11 years as the Chief Artistic Officer at Audemars Piguet, designing icons such as the Royal Oak. A few years ago, Octavio decided to step away from the big watch houses and create a brand of his own that he felt filled a void that was missing in the watch business. That brand is Gorilla. Check out the interview coming up to hear about Octavio's story, his inspiration for design, where he sees Gorilla going into the future, and what his thoughts are about the current state of the watch world.
Hey, Octavio, welcome. I definitely appreciate you taking some time and being on the podcast. So definitely just want to thank you up front for that.
Hello, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's something that I personally have wanted to, learn a little bit more about your backstory. Obviously creating this new watch brand. And I think that there's a lot of other people out there that have seen the product and are definitely interested in the cool story behind it. So I think this definitely will be informative for everybody. I know that you've had quite a bit of experience in the watch world, to say the least. Specifically, I know you came from Omega at one point and a long time at Audemars Piguet. And I just guess I'd really like to know a little bit more about kind of that experience, kind of what that was like and kind of what you took from that as you decided to start something on your own.
I began my first steps in the watch industry with Omega, effectively. An incredible experience. You had a very strong product-focused company that really understood the importance of design in the development process. That's one of the key learnings that I got, was really understanding the essence of the brand in order to be able to create products that were aligned with the brand's philosophy. And then from there I went to Audemars Piguet.
So I mean, looking back on it, and I know that there are, it's not just one watch that makes a brand famous, but the Royal Oak, I know that you were a part of that. I guess looking back on that, it's still an amazing experience just to say that it's such an iconic piece, to say that you were a part of that for a number of years.
Well, it's interesting because obviously Audemars Piguet is 11 years of my design development as a designer. It represents a big part of my design career as a watch designer. At the same token, I would say that the experience that I had at Omega, working on Speedmasters and Constellations and the Aquaterra collection and Seamasters and Cindy Crawford's Choice and Pierce Brosnan and Michael Phelps was just as enriching in a sense. And so effectively, the icon that everyone talks about is Royal Oak. And it's absolutely a very significant, important watch in the history of watch design. And it is special to be a part of that. I feel privileged to have been able to work with the teams that developed that piece back in '72, and to have been able to also in a way, when I was involved with the company, to sort of make sure that at that moment when I was there, the product was going in a direction that I felt that piece had to be at that time.
Leading into the next part, I mean, such a cool experience with those two brands. And then you've decided to, back in, I think 2016 is when you started your own watch brand. So what was the decision that led you to say, okay, I've put in my time here, I've had an amazing experience, but now I'm going to go ahead and try to do this, my own watch brand? Like, what was that decision like?
Well, I have to say that after 11 years with Audemars, I felt that it was really time for a change, time for something new. I'd always, in the back of my mind, had the idea of starting something on my own. And so in 2015 was that moment, was that time that I felt there was an opportunity. I felt that there was an opening, there was a space that was available that that we could really address, that I could address with something new and fresh and different and bold.
And so speaking to that, like, and I think obviously that your experience led you to this, but like what that void that you talk about, that piece that was missing, like what was that? Like, what is it? Because there's a lot of watch brands that start out and a lot of new ones that come into the marketplace. But with your experience, like, what did you feel like that was missing?
Well, first of all, we felt this was kind of a general tendency that speaking with certain retailers, speaking with certain clients, collectors, the accessible brands were starting to upscale for many different reasons and reposition themselves in terms of pricing. And so that was leaving some voids, some areas, some pockets of opportunity. And so we also felt that in the price segment between $1,000 and $4,000, there was less creativity. There was less experimentation with materials, with design. It seemed to me that brands were much more focused on mass market products, which in a lot of ways makes sense in that price category. But we felt that there was an opportunity to create something special that could connect in a more personal way with a more targeted audience.
And moving into like what the brand is called, which is Gorilla. It's clearly a watch that is disrupting. It's a disruptor, right, in the industry. And so I'm curious, what is the story behind the name? Because it's very unique, very cool. So what led you to that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a disruptor as much as it is a statement. It's an author brand. It's a brand that has a very strong design language that positions itself and in a very specific way. And so we felt that the name had to be just as strong and just as positioning. And so and we wanted something in a way that was either you liked it or you didn't like it, but regardless, you would never forget it. And we felt that Gorilla really ticked those boxes for us.
I wanted to ask you, so the concept behind Gorilla obviously is related to muscle cars and the American muscle car specifically. And I know that you have a passion for that. And tell us a little bit about that where that came from.
Yeah, it's true that I was born and raised in Chicago. My dad was a part-time mechanic. He liked tinkering with cars, and so I was always muscle cars. Not only muscle cars, but cars from the 70s, 80s, 90s were always around the house, and my dad would always push me to go and help him, tinker around with these cars. So the smell of gasoline and oil and all this was kind of a weekend thing for us. So that's part of the attraction that I have to these machines. They're so analog and so visceral and but also the muscle car world and car culture more in general. Car culture is such a rich visual culture, whether it's Japanese sports cars or American muscle or European sports cars. They all have this sort of emotional ingredient that I think is very comparable to the watch world, And I think that the terminology, the vocabulary is similar. We speak about horsepower and we speak about frequencies and power reserve and all. So there's this shared vocabulary between these two worlds that I felt really fit well together with the idea that we wanted to build around the brand world that is Gorilla today.
Yeah, it's. I think the thing is that you see a lot of brands that try to do something with maybe a car brand, and it never seems to really work out too well, right? Like you never see, there is obviously a few, but there are partnerships that put the brand on the watch. And with you guys, it's obviously not the case, but very around that, as you said, talk about the concept of the muscle car and the colors that go into it, and obviously the materials. So I think that really resonates well with people that obviously have the similar appreciation to cars that you do.
Yeah, and in fact, one of our benchmarks when we began really thinking about the brand world, building this world around the product, one of the benchmarks was actually Breitling. The Breitling at one point was really focused on aviation, and the products were conceived in that way. Obviously, there's a history and there's a lineage that goes across that brand at that time. And we've Lucas and I both appreciate the sort of clarity, the clear message, and the link to the product was so strong that in a lot of ways we wanted to emulate that with our brand. A very strong, clear, understandable message, speaking to an audience again of like-minded people, passionate about mechanics, passionate about and this analog emotional connection to a machine, and we felt that if I had to take a brand that sort of was a benchmark, it would be Breitling, the whole pilot era of Breitling.
Looking at the watch, right, and getting into kind of the materials of it, like the watch is a very different look. Talk to us a little bit about like why you chose that specific shape for the majority of the pieces.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of that comes from, I would say, the Omega influence, if you want. And I know that oftentimes people will tell me, I see some elements of offshore, and I see, and obviously the materials that we used. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to experiment with forged carbon and ceramic and all these cutting edge materials throughout my time at Audemars. But I would say that one of the periods that I really, not periods, but products, more specifically, products that I really always appreciated was 125th anniversary Omega Speedmaster that I say we because a friend of mine had this piece. I really loved the shape of this watch. It was, I affectionately called it the washing machine, because it had a sort of washing machine shape to it with a round dial opening and a very bulky tonal shape case with an integrated bracelet with quite a fast tapering. And I was always intrigued by this watch. So that watch has always stuck in my mind, and it sort of became the muse of the fastback collection, was these unique proportions, along with everything that's going on in the dial of that particular piece. So I would say that was like that piece was the starting point in terms of the proportions that you see today on the fastback.
I want to touch on, you mentioned the materials, and I think that this is a very important part, because it is, as well as you speak about a lot of the DNA of the brand, to be able to use these unique materials that you're using in these watches, and be able to offer all of that at the price point that these watches are priced at, and these start at $880. So can you talk a little bit about the materials that go into it? And how you, I guess, wanting to keep it at that accessible level to everybody, because it is an amazing watch with all of these materials for that price.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning. How do you enter a saturated market and make an impact and get attention? It's by offering something unique, a unique package. And again, having worked with these materials before, I knew their mechanical attributes, what they could really bring to an end user, right? So The challenge then became finding a way to make it accessible, finding a way to through design, through manufacturing, um, uh, making the piece accessible. And it was challenging, but we were able to do it and do it in an aesthetically pleasing way, in a robust way.
And to that point, like utilizing the forged carbon, you use titanium case backs, and the crown, and then you've got sapphire crystal, the anodized aluminum, and then the ceramic. What I appreciate is the fact that you guys, some of the watches have this polished ceramic, and then the other have like a brushed matte ceramic, and you guys it's so well executed on each piece, and gives people the option of what that really kind of speaks to them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Finishing is another important aspect of the appearance of the watch, differentiating the different references within a given collection. And the bead blasted ceramic will give you one appearance, one mood, and obviously the polished ceramic gives you a totally different watch. So playing with these finishes gives us quite a wide spectrum, along with the fantastic color palette that the anodized aluminum gives us, and also experimenting with different forged carbon fabrication processes in the future are also going to allow us to continuously offer up new alternatives within the Fastback collection.
You take it one step further, which I think that this is, I guess, really where it comes from, your experience in the watch business, and I guess the relationships that you've created with the high-end complications that Gorilla has, which I think really adds this sexiness to the brand. I mean, obviously the watches all have a similar look, but somebody is a watch collector or is looking for something different and unique, especially, again, going back to like something that's accessible, you've got this Wandering Hours movement. And I know that was in, I think the Audemars Piguet Star Wheel. Was that correct?
Well, yeah, Audemars Piguet had, I think they launched the Star Wheel in 1991, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that piece, that's a very special piece, the Star Wheel. I discovered it I first discovered it when I began at Audemars back in 2003, and I instantly fell in love with that movement, because it really visually it's very complex, but in fact it's also very efficient in its conception, and so that's what I really find fantastic about it. So yes, when we decided to launch Gorilla, that specific movement was part of our design agenda. It began first as an idea on paper, and then thanks to friendships, I was able to present it to the technical director of Vaucher, and they were open enough and encouraged us to develop that module with them, and that became actually the first module that Vaucher ever manufactured for a company, for an independent brand, was the drift module. But that's where the comparison with the Star Wheel ends, because in fact that ultimately they're two quite different systems, despite the fact that they both have rotating satellite discs that indicate the hour. The Star Wheel has a spring. In fact, it's called the Star Wheel because under each disc it has a star-shaped gear that's spring loaded, and our module has a Geneva cross system, which is really quite different. Each one have their pros and cons, and so it's not exactly a Star Wheel. It's a wandering hour.
And that Wandering Hour, that was your first piece that you launched back in 2015, 2016, correct?
The first piece we launched was the Fastback Original with the 8,000 caliber. Yeah, that was the first piece we launched. We launched online only, 500 pieces, limited edition, and it did very well, and it allowed us to slowly gain momentum. And the first Fastback Drift was launched in 2017.
Okay. And so talk to me a little bit about that time. Was that 2018. A little bit about that time. Was there ever a time, I mean, obviously starting something new is always, there's always obviously sense of uncertainty. Obviously your experience brings a lot to the table. That it's going to turn out well. But were there times when it's like, hey, how is this going to be perceived? Or was it you just knew 100% with your kind of gut and the void that you feel needed to be filled that this was going to be a success?
Andrew, it was a roller coaster ride. It has been a roller coaster ride of emotions and of risk and of ups and downs. I'm lucky enough to have a team around me that really all believe in the brand, and it's helped us really through the harder times. I would say one of the bigger risks was the development of the Fastback Drift, because we didn't know at that time if people would buy into the brand at that price level, and so that was a big risk. It was a leap of faith. At the same time, I want to say that when you have Porsche as a partner, you know that they're going to deliver quality. And when I saw the first prototypes, I was convinced that people would understand what we were trying to accomplish with that watch. That it was in a lot of ways it was our love letter to the watch industry, our love letter to watchmaking, this piece, and effectively the watch really did very well. People really understood. We got a lot of support, and now we're on our third series. The drift is only the beginning. It's obviously given us the confidence to explore even further. And so, fascinating.
I like that. I know that there is, you've given me a few hints of what's to come. I know it's not out yet and you can't share it. But when does that look like it would be launched so people can kind of get excited for that?
Yeah, well, we're really excited about a new piece that we'll be unveiling this summer. It's going to be our big launch of the year, and again, rallying around a group of passionate people to help us bring this together. And during these challenging times, I think it's we bringing in something fresh and kind of from a different angle is always a good thing, I think.
What I'm gathering from the conversation is you always have new executions of pieces, but it seems like there will always be this, if you look at the Vaucher movement and this piece that you're talking about coming in the summer, it seems like and listening to you talk about innovation and pushing the boundaries, that is part of the forward thinking of you guys as a brand, that what is the next thing that we can offer that keeps people wanting more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a reflex for me to continuously rethink things. So whether it's the Fastback collections, but also now the new Outlaw range that we introduced last year, we are absolutely convinced that by continuously building these two collections that people will continue to yeah, we have to stay relevant. We have to stay relevant, and to do that, we have to continuously be creative and offer new alternatives. Yes.
I mean, as you know, just as well as I do, being in this business, that relevancy is what's going to keep moving forward. Where I think a lot of brands that get comfortable or don't reinvent themselves, that's when pieces or when brands kind of just fall out of favor, and nobody's looking for that brand anymore because it's not something that is catching people's attention. So I think, as long as we've been working together, and that's a big reason why, from the numerous conversations that we've had, is where I see that brand just having so much staying power, and really this being the launch pad for what the future looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. And product is only one. It's a very important component, but obviously communication is another one. And there too, again, to come back to Lucas's role within the company, having the savoir-faire to be able to communicate with audiences and show them new offerings is the way that we do at Gorilla through the various digital platforms, but also supporting our retailers with this same savoir-faire. So really being able to give them an edge when possible, to be able to drive also perhaps untapped markets, untapped clients, untapped territories into their boutiques. These sorts of things are the future, and I think working together with retailers that understand that things are changing, right? That the whole landscape is evolving into something new and morphing, and the digital domain, the digital realm is really a key also in promoting the brand currently, and also sharing our future aspirations with our clients.
Question that I wanted to ask you, and it's a good segue, in that kind of change in the way people are buying and buying behavior, especially like in younger generations, and specifically to watches, right? Because there's a lot of risks that have been moved over to an Apple Watch. And that's just, there's a huge segment of the population that are just tied to their Apple Watch because it connects to the phone and gives them fitness information. How do you see, or what have you seen in the changes in your kind of career, like in that demographic, in that shifting? Like, do you see that as a big issue, or do you see people that are always going to have this appreciation for mechanical timekeeping and something that's not an Apple Watch, for example?
Mm-hmm. I would say that when I started in the industry back in 1999, it was a more aficionado trade, the watch industry and watches. You had to sort of be in the know, and you had to. Your dad had to have had a watch. I had no idea about watches until I studied design here in Switzerland. It was the first time I was really ever exposed to, real watchmaking per se. Before that, it was just more a sports accessory or something, for me. It was I never even considered it as a career path, by the way, watches, watch design. Absolutely not. I wanted to go back to the U.S. and design sneakers. I thought that was a cooler route, So it just so happened that being in Switzerland, you're exposed to the industry, right? And then you start understanding the complexity of these movements and the craftsmanship behind these pieces, and the boldness of some of the brands, especially when you're younger and you're intrigued by things like carbon and ceramic and or young at heart at least, and and so all of those elements start, and I don't think any of that has changed today. I think that the younger generation is just as intrigued by those same magical elements that make up the watch, a mechanical watch. And so whether it's a Miyota or a high end Swiss caliber, by the way, I mean, the beating heart of a balance wheel is a magical thing. And so I think that I understand the idea that somehow the Apple Watch is sort of stealing away wrists from potential mechanical watch buyers. But I just think that in any case, from my experience with Gorilla, we have a very young audience. We have clients that start at 19 years old, even younger, and that love the brand, that don't necessarily look at it first as a mechanical watch brand, that come in through a different angle. Maybe it's the material, maybe it's the design, maybe it's the brand world, but that ultimately begin to understand deeper and begin to appreciate the analog experience of a mechanical watch. And that's the gateway. And so and then they discover the drift, and that just blows their mind. How do you read it? And then a dialogue begins, and you take the time to explain, and people are fascinated with it. So, and it's true that social media has changed in a lot of ways the attention span that we have when we're going through our Instagram feed. But I think our watches have stopping power. Our pictures, we work hard, we curate our pictures so that people look twice at what we're up to. And then it's our job to, from there, as soon as we have a question, as soon as somebody is interested, that we take the time to respond and interact and share. It's one click at a time, and one person and one question at a time. That's it. So I think that there's absolutely I don't see that sort of migration of millennials towards some kind of digital alternative to mechanical watches. I see complementary things between an Apple Watch and what we're doing.
I'm curious. Like, we look at the watch industry as a whole at the moment, and it's the brands like the Rolex and AP and Patek that have these, the Royal Oak or the Nautilus or the Submariner. What do you think, other than just it being a limited production? Because obviously that is an issue with, you can't just go out and easily find some of these watches. But what creates that demand, so that something is just so, people just want it, and they will pay well over retail for some of these watches. Like, obviously design goes into it, and it has to be a piece that just is pleasing to everybody. But I'm curious of your opinion of that.
Yeah, well, I think that a big component in your question is design. Design is a bit. I mean, these houses are 130, 40 years old houses, right? It takes a long time to build a brand that people trust, and I think that if you want, without necessarily considering a Patek Philippe or an Audemars Piguet, I think that brand building is about building trust with your customers and fulfilling your promise to them, right? Because they're giving you their hard-earned money, and so they're expecting in return your promise, what you're saying that you're going to deliver. And so that takes a long time to get that trust, and it can easily you can easily lose that trust through a mistake or through negligence or whatever it is. So I think that these brands have, and then obviously you mentioned iconic products like not the Nautilus and the Royal Oak and Rolex in and of itself is an iconic brand beyond watchmaking even. I mean, I think design is a very important part in the iconic status of these particular products, Nautilus and Royal Oak. They just happen to be designed by the same guy. On top of that, and delivering on the promise. Those are the two principal ingredients I would say that make these pieces so desirable. Obviously, I mean, when you want to deliver that level of quality, you're automatically constrained to a certain quantity per year. So that creates rarity, and that's the let's say the third component in creating an iconic status product like the Royal Oak or the Nautilus.
I think that the way that you guys operate and the way that you guys introduce new pieces, especially like the GTs and into some of the drifts, they, for the most part, are limited edition. So it could be 250, 300, 500 pieces, but once that is done, the watch goes away. And you know, I was, the reason I was asking that question is obviously as the future of Gorilla grows, and you want to continue that so that in 20, 30, 50 years, 100 years, Gorilla is still around, and it's you having that that exposure to some of these brands that are 100 years old. I guess gives you the edge over a lot of other brands.
I hope so. I hope you're right. No, obviously having had the experience that I had puts us in a unique position, right? I would love to imagine that the brand could last 100 years. That would be wonderful. I hope it does. We're working very hard today to be proud of what we're doing, right? Just to be proud of what we're doing and know that we're doing our due diligence to deliver. That's the first thing. And if we can do that right already, I'm very happy. And then I think it's about maintaining the cap in our strategy. And again, it goes beyond what we're doing here at headquarters. It's also what you're doing on the ground. It's also what our partners in Japan are doing. And so it's a network of people all moving in the same direction, you know, all with the same vision and all with the same aspiration. That's how brands last through the good times and through the hard times. It's with strong partnerships.
Well, I definitely appreciate you taking your valuable time and being able to let me ask you some questions, because I know it's there are people out there that are really interested. It's great to see the direction of the brand, and I think everybody looks forward to these big launches that are coming, and what's new and exciting coming from Gorilla.
Andrew, it's a pleasure talking to you always.
Thank you.
I hope to see you soon.
In person, hopefully soon.
Yes, in person, out in Florida.
Absolutely.
I look forward to working with you when things start opening up more.
Sounds great.
And in the meantime, I wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for taking the time too, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Octavio Garcia, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.